All right, so today we will pick up with the English Reformation, that is also known as the Anglican Reformation. Okay, um, we begin to see news of the Reformation is going to come to England kind of around the year 1520 through travelers, and a lot of printed texts will actually diffuse across the English Channel into England. Okay, and despite the fact that England is eventually going to become Protestant. At first, they remain heavily Catholic. The king during this time period is King Henry VIII. Okay, and he is going to keep England Catholic, and he's actually going to write a whole pamphlet that basically bashes Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation. And the Pope, kind of to thank him for this, gives him the nickname Defender of the Faith. Okay, um, King Henry VIII is married to Catherine of Aragon. Okay, Catherine of Aragon, her parents are King Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, so she is also heavily Catholic. Okay, and we're going to see all children of theirs are going to die in infancy, except for one by the name of Mary Tudor. Okay, Tudor is the family that King Henry VIII is from, that is ruling the dynasty. That's spelled Tudor. Okay, and concern over this is that if it's only a daughter that is alive, that survives, there's no male heir to take the throne, which means the Tudor family will not inherit the throne. The daughter will have to marry into another family, and that family will most likely get possession and power of the English throne. Okay, we're looking at by 1527. She is out of childbearing years. Okay, so Catherine of Aragon will not be able to have any more children. And kind of something to kind of keep in mind here is he's married to Catherine of Aragon, so it's got to be a legitimate kid from her. But King Henry is having a series of affairs with a bunch of other women. Okay, and one woman that he's very interested in starting an affair with is by the name of Anne Boleyn. You see her pictured here on the right. Okay, here's King Henry VIII. Here's Anne Boleyn. It's debated whether she was actually pretty or not, but she was known to have brown eyes. Um, and King Henry VIII is having an affair with her sister, actually. So having an affair with Anne Boleyn's sister. Anne Boleyn is part of King Henry VIII's feudal court, so he's very much aware of who she is, and he makes a lot of advances towards her, but she refuses them all, and basically says, "Hey, look, if you want to be with me, you got to marry me." And that only makes King Henry VIII even more infatuated with Anne Boleyn. So it's kind of this double whammy. He wants a male heir. Back then, if women didn't have male children, they were blamed. DNA and genetics had not been discovered, so there's no understanding of that. Okay, so Catherine of Aragon is completely blamed for not having male children. So King Henry VIII is like, okay, well maybe I can get another wife, and he's interested in sleeping with this woman, right? So he seeks an annulment from the Catholic Church. Okay, um, the Catholic Church, they do not believe in divorce. Okay, if you are married in a Catholic Church, they will not issue you a divorce. You might go and get a divorce legally, like in law, you might be divorced, but in the Catholic Church's eyes, if you're married in the Catholic Church, you will always be married. Okay, um, but they do have this thing called an annulment, right? Catholics, keep in mind, marriage is a sacrament. It's a union of two souls in the eyes of God. Um, but they will annul a marriage if they think it was kind of like wrong to begin with, right? So if it was not a fair union or a honest union, if there was some sort of conspiracy behind it or dishonesty, they might annul it, right? So if you get married and your husband lied to you and hid the fact that he had a huge gambling problem, and then later that causes you to have a lot of financial issues and a lot of issues in your marriage, then the Catholic Church might issue an annulment because they said you weren't fair in making that union, not honest kind of to begin with. Okay, so he seeks an annulment, and being the king, he was extremely literate and knew Latin, so he's actually read the Bible. And there is he actually goes to the Bible looking for, an answer, a reason why he could get an annulment. And he finds it in Leviticus, which is a book in the Bible, okay? And it is Leviticus 20:21, okay? And this part of the Bible reads, "And if a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He hath uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless." Okay, so basically, Catherine of Aragon was married to King Henry VIII's brother, and then King Henry VIII's brother died, so she then married King Henry VIII. So he says that his union with Catherine of Aragon was unjust to begin with, because according to the Bible, they should have never been married in the Catholic Church. Okay, so he goes to the Pope and asks for an annulment, and the Pope kind of is in a pickle, a quandary, right, between the rock and a hard place, because while all this is happening, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V is actually on campaign in southern Italy. For Spain, he has annexed the little island of Sicily and various provinces in southern Italy. Rome is in Italy, and keep in mind, Charles V is related to Catherine of Aragon. It's the nephew of Catherine of Aragon, so he's definitely going to be biased and not want King Henry VIII to get this annulment. So the Pope is kind of given two options, right? The first option is he grants King Henry VIII the annulment. That upsets Charles V, and that would risk possibly Charles V turning on Rome and attacking Rome and maybe overthrowing the Pope and replacing him with someone else. If he does that, England will remain Catholic. The other option is he ignores King Henry VIII, they don't issue the annulment, and he keeps Charles V happy, and there is no threat to him. So the Pope basically decides that he's not going to give King Henry VIII the annulment. And because of that, King Henry VIII is going to break with the Catholic Church. Okay, King Henry VIII starts a new church, and what is that new church called? That is called the Anglican Church. Okay, and then in 1534, when this happens, he's going to pass the Act of Supremacy that says the King of England is the head of the church. Okay, other than that, there really is no change. Okay. Really, the only change we see here in England to begin with, at first, with the Anglican Reformation, is that the Pope does not have power over them. Okay, they get rid of papal supremacy, and the head of the church is not going to be the Pope, but it's going to be the King of England. That is the only change, right? Everything else remains the same. Services remain, or prayers and reading of the Bible remains in Latin. The Bible itself remains in Latin. All of these religious pilgrimages and services they do remains the same. The praying to the saints remains the same, right? Really, you see no fundamental change other than the fact that you now don't listen to the Pope. You now listen to the King of England, King Henry VIII. Okay. That's going to be an important thing here that we're going to see. You really have minimal change here at the beginning of the Anglican Reformation. Okay. King Henry VIII is going to pick a guy, kind of a religious leader of the church. The religious leader of the Anglican Church will be the Archbishop of Canterbury, who will advise the king on religious issues. And he's going to pick this man by the name of Thomas Cranmer to be the Archbishop of Canterbury. And because of that, Thomas Cranmer annuls the marriage between King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, and then he then turns around and marries Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Same issue here. Okay, Anne Boleyn has a daughter named Elizabeth, but fails, quote unquote, to birth a son, and she will also suffer a series of miscarriages. Okay, so King Henry VIII will also not be pleased with this. Okay, so he basically does all of this and still doesn't get the male heir. He will then become kind of infatuated with a new woman, Jane Seymour. So again, wandering eye. The issue is he's now married to Anne Boleyn. So what is he going to do? He's going to charge Anne Boleyn with adultery and have her beheaded. Okay. The urban myth is that King Henry VIII is going to hire a famous swordsman to kill her. So it's one stroke of the sword that beheads her. The men back then that did this, they were axemen, the executioners. You've probably seen this in cartoons. They're kind of normally stereotypically big, kind of heavy-set dudes with a black mask on who carried an axe. Their job was to kill people, so that is a traumatizing thing to do all day. So the stories, many of them were drunkards, so that they would often miss your head. So they might get a piece of your ear, or they might get, part of your scalp, or they would actually hit you in the neck, but it wouldn't be a clean stroke. So then your head would be like half attached, half not attached. So it's basically like this really big thing. If you're going to be executed, you're probably going to suffer a little before you died. So the urban myth is he hires a famous swordsman to kill her so she doesn't have to suffer. Well, that's probably more of an urban myth, right? Since he's now a widower, he can marry Jane Seymour, so they get married. And finally, Jane Seymour has a son, and that son is Edward the Sixth. Okay, Edward the Sixth will inherit the throne. Okay, when he's only 9 years old. So he's in an impressionable young age. He doesn't really know how to think for himself. He doesn't really know how to manage anything. This is really when we begin to see Thomas Cranmer make a lot of changes to the Anglican Church. Okay, because basically Edward is kind of a kid, doesn't really know what he's doing. Okay, so Edward the Sixth inherits the throne in 1547. If you kind of want a time frame of when this happens, okay. So 1547, he inherits the throne, and since he's a kid and doesn't kind of really have knowledge or a sense of self, Thomas Cranmer is going to push through all these changes to Anglican Church and actually make it really Protestant. Okay, what do these changes look like? Okay, services will now be done in English. Priests are going to be allowed to marry, and only communion and baptism will be sacraments, and the Bible will also now be in English. Okay, so these are huge Protestant changes. We see, yes, technically, England breaks from the Catholic Church in 1534, but we really don't see the Anglican Church become it not till 1547 that you see the Anglican Church becomes Protestant in the way that we imagine it when we say Protestant. Okay. He will not rule for very long. You see, Edward VI will die within 6 years of his rule. So by 1553, he's dead. He's all of a teenager. Okay, Mary Tudor, okay, becomes Queen of England. Okay, the daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. Once he has divorced Catherine of Aragon, basically Catherine and Mary are locked in a castle and excluded from court and basically ostracized. And basically they remain extremely Catholic, and they prayed and worshipped. So she comes to the throne. You see her pictured here with La Perengia, the Pilgrim Pearl, okay, given to her by Spain. And she's basically going to try to undo everything that Thomas Cranmer's done. Okay, she's going to try to return England back to Catholicism. She's going to try to bring back papal supremacy. She's going to use force to do this. Okay, so she's going to have Cranmer, 200 leading Protestants, burned at the stake. Okay, she's going to persecute and hunt down anyone else that is still practicing the Protestant faith. This is going to earn her the infamous nickname Bloody Mary. Okay, she will not remain on the throne for very long. The story of how she loses her throne gets kind of complex. That's more English and European history, so we're not going to get into it. It's kind of a forced abdication after rebellion. But if you just know that she was kind of really unpopular for this move and she's replaced by Elizabeth I for this class, that's going to be okay. Okay. So it's going to be her stepsister, Elizabeth I, who is the daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, that is going to take the throne. Okay, and she's going to become extremely famous, very important. We'll talk about her kind of more in depth later when we begin to talk about kind of the English Empire. But for now, we'll briefly kind of mention her with regards to the Anglican Reformation. Okay, she earns the nickname the Virgin Queen, not because she was a virgin, but because she never married. She did this for nationalist reasons. She didn't want to be tied to some sort of European noble family. She wanted to make decisions for England herself. Okay, and she's going to end the series of religious tensions and issues with the Act of Supremacy of 1559. Okay, this is known as the Elizabethan Compromise. Okay, this Act of Supremacy names herself as Supreme Governor of the Anglican Church, so there is no papal supremacy. But after that, she kind of leaves religious issues open-ended. Okay, she's going to accept these Protestant reforms, but she's going to keep kind of the church hierarchy of bishops, archbishops, priests. You basically see that the Anglican Church kind of becomes this mix of Protestantism and Catholicism. At one end, you have people that are basically Catholic but don't believe in papal supremacy, and at the other end, you basically have people who are completely Protestant. Okay, you have some Protestants that are upset with this because they thought the Catholic Church, or they thought the Anglican Church needed to reform and actually become more Protestant. This group is known as the Puritans. You might not have heard of the Puritans, but you have heard of the Pilgrims, which are a Puritan group. So you kind of see a compromise here where officially England is Protestant now, okay, but you see kind of how you practice Christianity is open-ended and respected, and you kind of see the matters of religion are kind of become a personal personal stance, not really kind of something that's being enforced by the government like it is in Spain.